Osteosarcoma is bone cancer. They don't really know what causes it. I've seen white children, Black children, Hispanic children with this illness. I've seen boys with it. I've seen girls with it. But they believed that my son maybe lacked some sort of tumor suppressant gene. He did ask questions and I welcomed it, and I didn't have the doctors sugarcoat anything. I wanted him to know what was happening, and living without him has been the hardest, missing him. And I'm just wondering, like, now it's been almost 2 years, and just wondering what he would be like. What would he be doing? He would be a senior in high school right now. We did have time to prepare, but you're never really prepared. For me, it was like, okay, God, you're going to have to really show me like who you are, that your word is true. That's kind of how I felt with God. Like I felt hurt. I felt like he betrayed my trust a little bit. On this side of eternity, it feels like we lost, you know.
You think you will be able to go through what you went through if it wouldn't be for your faith?
I don't think so.
Can you introduce yourself? Tell our audience who you are.
I am Ashley Selby-Karney, and professionally, I am a author, speaker, writer, and a coach. I do grief coaching as well as life coaching, and personally, I am a daughter, a friend, a mom, and just navigating my way through this new season that I've been thrown into, and enjoying the adventure that I'm on.
Why people need to listen to this episode?
Yeah, I'm hoping to share my faith and give people hope and show people how love is really the one thing that matters here in this life.
For anyone that doesn't know your story, please tell us a little bit how your story was about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, everything was pretty normal. I was a teacher and I taught math, and my son was at school with me in elementary. And in 2019, he started limping, and he played sports and stuff, so they thought maybe it was a sprained knee, maybe some growing pains. And then it just got to the point where he no longer was able to walk. And so I took him to the local Care Now, and that's where we heard for the first time that he had a tumor.
Tell us about that day.
I thought maybe a torn meniscus or MCL, whatever happens to athletes, you know. I thought it was a very normal injury, like maybe he would have to have surgery or something, but no, initially it was a lot of shock. Then came like confusion, trying to figure out, how did this happen? Was it something that I did? Was it something that he did? Was it something he ate? You know, we just didn't really know a lot about what was happening. And so we were given 2 possible diagnoses, one being osteosarcoma and the other being Ewing's sarcoma. Both are bone cancers. They're kind of like sister cancers, I guess you could say. And it ended up being osteosarcoma. And so that was March 6th of 2019. And then by March 16th, 10 days later, he was starting his first round of chemotherapy.
How old was your son?
He was 10 when he got diagnosed. So he was in 5th grade, never really sick, never really complained of a lot of pain or anything like that. Very athletic. He played soccer, football, basketball. He was actually in basketball season at the time when he got this injury, or what we thought was an injury. So yeah, it was out of the blue.
Before this diagnosis, what was your dream for your son?
I think like most parents, you know, he wanted to go to TCU and play football there, and if not football, basketball. And I just wanted him to have, you know, a family, support his dreams as well. For me, I never I never pictured this a part of our story. And so I think that that was the hardest part to wrap your brain around. And so I taught fifth grade, and he was in fifth grade at the time of diagnosis. So it was a total shock to both of us.
Now, when they tell you the news, how a mother processes that information and how a mother handles those feelings and how a mother communicate that to your 10 years old.
Yeah, I distinctly remember Jaden wanting to sleep with me that night because he thought he was going to die. His only information about cancer was that old people get it and they die from it usually. And so for me, that was really hard. I had never seen him, so vulnerable and just questioning a lot. But there wasn't really a lot of time to process. Everything happened really, really quickly. By the next day, I had to get insurance and everything together, and we were being admitted to the hospital. Everything moved very, very quickly. We just ultimately had to trust the doctors and the people who we entrusted to take care of him.
Where did you get strength to go even through the night to the next day?
Well, I've always been a Christian. I grew up in church, and so I've always had faith. I think that this made me dig a little bit deeper and really just figure out, like, okay, who is God? And, I've read the stories of miracles in the Bible throughout my life and my childhood, and so I really started to dig into that and really believe that that was going to happen for us as well. We saw several miracles along the way. My son fought for a total of 5 years. He relapsed a total of 5 times. And each time he came out of it, and he was just stronger and healthier. It never crossed my mind until probably the last 6 months. And then we started figuring out what needs to be done. What did he want to do with that time? And of course, he wanted to do go to a lot of sporting events. So we went to a Steelers game, and we went to a TCU game, and we had a second line down Bourbon Street in his honor. He got to speak in one of my best friend's weddings, which was really awesome for him to make that. He designed a shirt with the Dallas Stars and got to be the star of the night for the Hockey Beats Cancer Night. And so we did some pretty awesome things towards the end. And, there were a lot of hard times. It definitely wasn't easy. And as a mother, seeing my child like that, I wanted to take it from him. But there were also opportunities that I would have never been able to provide him as a single mom that he was able to experience during that time, which inevitably made it a better experience for both of us.
You say that you may not been able to provide those experiences for him, right? We're going to talk about the monetary part, but also I think a lot of moms, we don't make those experiences happen, not because of the limitations with money, but also because we never think that moment is going to come. And I think this is a big lesson for everybody. Mother or no mother, don't wait to the last minute with the ones that you love, and find the ways to make things happen that you are enjoying the moment, enjoying life, and not waiting for a diagnosis to understand that life is so short. They say there is not a name for when you lose a kid. Mm-hmm. En español no hay. You can be an orphan, you can be many other things, but there is not a widow. Yeah. But there is not a word that defines when you lose your son. Mm-hmm. And I imagine it's because of the pain, right? The inexplicable pain that mothers suffer. What do you think was the hardest moment for you, Ashley?
Definitely living without him. has been the hardest, missing him. And I'm just wondering, like now it's been almost 2 years, and just wondering what he would be like. What would he be doing? He would be a senior in high school right now. And so seeing all his friends do the senior things and the parents and their hustle and bustle with it all. And I just wonder what it would be like. And I think the hardest thing for me was we did have time to prepare, but you're never really prepared. And for me, it was praying for a miracle, but also like preparing for like what reality actually was. And so afterwards, when Jaden did end up dying, for me, it was like, okay, God, you're going to have to really show me like who you are and that your word is true and what it says, you know, it says you're a healer, like what does that actually mean? What is victory actually? And just really trying to dig into the scriptures and things that I was standing on to help heal my son and figure out, you know, what was true. Because I kind of describe it as if you have like a really good friend who you trusted, you know, with your life, with everything, with your kids, you know, and they did something to hurt you. That's kind of how I felt with God. Like I felt hurt. I felt like he betrayed my trust a little bit. I trusted him to heal him. I, you know, shared our story and our battle as we were fighting it. And so on this side of eternity, it feels like we lost, you know, but ultimately I think Jaden is far better off than we all are here. And I believe I'll see him again and soon. But I had to work through that with the Lord, and I had to figure out, you know, how to trust him again, how to be vulnerable with him again. And I think that's something he anticipated and knew was coming. And he's just beautifully been with me every step of the way and just let me heal at my own pace and gently. And the hardest part was working back through my faith and what I believed and what the Bible says and what I've experienced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's very easy to give an opinion, but when you live through those moments is when you really put your faith to test, right? When you say we were preparing, let's go back a little bit to all the things that you guys have to go through together. First, the financial part, because going through any type of like chronicle or cancer, chronic illness or cancer, it's very expensive in this country, especially if you're a single mother too. You are your only income. How do you navigate it, all this process? First, from the financial perspective, and then from all the things that you didn't understand and had to start learning at hospitals.
Yeah, I think the biggest decision I had to make financially was resigning from my job. I was a teacher at the time, and we were basically living in the hospital for a week and then living at home for a week, living in the hospital for a week. And that was kind of our routine during treatment. And I just felt it was really unfair to my kids and my team at work to be in and out and to have like a long-term sub. And so that was a really big decision. But I knew ultimately that my son needed me to be there and he was going to need me. I mean, there were lots of side effects that we dealt with at home that I wouldn't have been able to juggle working as well. So that was the first major financial decision. But also, prior to my son's diagnosis, I started tithing at my church and just really believing that if I give God the first 10%, he can do more with the 90 than I can do with the 100. And so I really started praying like I have been tithing, I need you to provide. And he did, between, the generosity of friends and just the community that he had given me, and then charities. And then we just learned to live a little bit more of a simpler life. It was just amazing to see, like, never had a bill that was late, never needed for anything. People were always willing to give. And that was really exciting to see that at least my bills were not a worry. Everything else was, but that wasn't. And then as far as like medical bills, I mean, I still get some, but I do what I can. And I don't think it has to be that expensive, but it is. And that's the reality that we live in. And so just really trying to manage money smartly in a situation like that.
What about the experience in hospitals? Because we have to learn even a new language, right, when you are there. And even being a personal nurse and asking questions, advocating for your son's health. How was your experience in that sense?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve. A lot of language and terminology that I didn't know. When you're diagnosed, you get a big binder full of all kinds of stuff. So I actually took the time to read that and to kind of prepare myself. I had never walked with anybody through cancer. My grandparents had cancer, but I was younger, and so I never really experienced that. So I wanted to be present. I wanted to be able to advocate for him. And so I did my best to learn as much as possible, but also being careful because the internet isn't really nice about things like this. You see hard statistics and you see hard outcomes. So it's a fine line of trying to learn, but also not letting it become your belief system. And the hospital that we were at, the staff just became like a second family to us. We lived there in between treatments. And like I said, my son fought for a total of 5 years. So out of that 5 years, we probably lived in the hospital for 3 of them. Just having a team that was also on our side was awesome as well, and a really big deal because I was able to just be vulnerable and talk candidly with them, and get their opinions and actually trust them.
The name of the diagnosis, right? Mm-hmm. What is it and what did you learn about it?
Yeah, so osteosarcoma is bone cancer. They don't really know what causes it. I've seen, white children, black children, Hispanic children with this illness. I've seen boys with it. I've seen girls with it. I've seen it in the arm. I've seen it in the leg. I've seen it in the spine. So they don't really have a, definite, this is what causes it. But they believed that my son maybe lacked some sort of tumor suppressant gene that kept the tumors from coming back and growing so rapidly. But essentially it happens during your adolescent years. So anywhere from, 10 to 30, but I've also seen a 6-year-old with it. I've seen a baby with it. So there's still a lot to learn. And honestly, there hasn't been new treatment out for this disease since the 70s. And so a lot of research is kind of going into that. And so the further he got along in his treatment, the more I started learning about the actual medical side and the mutation in the genes and the different things that are required to be in a clinical trial. And so there's a lot of factors to it, but there's no definite cause to it. And also you see a lot of treatments that have developed for like leukemia because it is so much more prevalent, whereas osteosarcoma is really only about 10% of kids. You see these leaps and bounds being made for other cancers or other childhood cancers. And you want to help move it forward. So I believe that they are trying to do that in the medical field, and I'm hoping that they are making those leaps and bounds so that it does become something that is curable.
What were some of the treatments that he had to go through?
Yeah, so his initial treatment was about 9 months long, and he did 3 different kind of drugs. One of the chemotherapy is named dioxirubicin, and it's known as the Red Devil. It is a syringe with red liquid, and its job is to go in and just not only kill cancer cells, but it does also kill your healthy cells as well, trying to just wipe out. The second medicine that he was on was another chemotherapy called cisplatin. And then the third one was called methotrexate. And so he would get these infusions once a week, and then it would have to clear his system, and then he would have to build back up his red blood cells and all his white blood cells and his blood counts, because like I said, it wipes you out completely. And so that's when the losing of the hair comes into place, and the possible fevers and trips to the hospital in between, because it is, it's helping cure you, but also it's making you sick at the same time by just the process of what it's doing.
Do you think he understood everything that was going on?
I think as time went on, he did. I let him make a lot of his decisions. We talked about it. One of the decisions he made was to get his leg amputated. He wanted to play sports. Like I said, he was an athlete. And so some of the other options that they had given us didn't allow for a future in that. So he made the decision to get his leg amputated, and we went through the process of getting a prosthetic. And he ended up being able to play sports and work out and do that stuff again. And so I think like as time went on, he did start to understand more of what was going on. He did ask questions, and I welcomed it, and I didn't have the doctors sugarcoat anything. I wanted him to know what was happening, and I wanted him to be able to ask those questions. So I think at first, no, but I think as time went on, I think he definitely understood. I think he had a phone by the time he got into 6th grade, so I think he also did maybe a little bit of his own research about it too, and started to understand some things. He had friends that he met in the hospital, and so they were able to talk to each other about the different things that they were going through and the different ways chemo affected them. Because even though they had the same disease, everybody is affected differently by the medication and, just those kind of things. And so I think he wanted to understand, and so he sought that out.
Was there hope, or the doctors were very bold?
The doctors never really weren't hopeful. They always were. And I appreciated that. I think my son was put on hospice twice. And so the first time he was put on hospice and he got discharged, I think that like ignited some more hope in us. He got some more time. But I think the second time he was put on hospice, and that, he was given 2 weeks to live at that point in time, and he made it almost 6 months. You see more of kind of the reality. I could see, the cancer starting to take over just basic functions of his body. I could see, the pain he was in. I could see the light dimming from his eyes. I could see him being tired. While we had a lot of hope through it, there does get to be a point where you realize, okay, this could be it. We could possibly not make it through this time. Mm-hmm. And inevitably, that's what ended up happening.
Was there a moment when you were giving up?
No, I don't think so. I always believed in his strength and in the Lord's ability to carry us through it. I did feel defeated at some point in time, throughout the journey, just because when it keeps coming back and keeps happening, you're just like, what are we doing wrong? We're following all the protocols that they've given us. We're doing all the treatments that they're asking of us, so there was moments of like where we felt a little defeated. But we tried not to sit in that too long. I do believe that your attitude and your outlook has something to do with your reality. I think ultimately that's what held us together is I was very open with my story and I wanted to share good news all the time. And we didn't always have good news, but I was always anticipating some kind of good news.
Was the same with him? Was he always positive, or was there a moment where he was giving up?
I think because it was a very pivotal time in his year, like in his life, it was his, from 10 to 15. Just imagine like how much you learn about yourself. Your personality starts to become your own. And so there were moments in time where he knew he was different. He did get bullied a little bit at school. And so I think those times were really hard for him to accept. And so when that started happening, I started to try to get him community with other amputees. And it was really hard to find other children who were amputees. So he just talked to a lot of adults. And they were always so impressed with him and just talk to him about how he was encouraging them by just wanting to do sports again, wanting to be up and walking and not necessarily in his wheelchair. And so I think that helped build his confidence up as I took him to these different amputee networks across the DFW area. And so I tried to do a lot of those things to build his confidence so that he could be strong in who he was, because he was a great kid, great person. And so I really wanted people to see him for that and maybe not his amputation.
It's so interesting what you're saying, because for those who have teenagers, we know it's one of the hardest stages, or at least that's what we think, right, on their lives. Because yes, they go through a lot, right? Hormones and understanding themselves. But it's so sad to see that your son's main struggles at that moment was to fit into a society than even fighting his own diagnosis, right? It's so sad to hear that when he was a warrior fighting for his life. That makes me sad as a mother. That means that we are not doing a good job with our kids. When was the moment that you had to face God and accept?
Jaden's last day, he told me he was done. He said he was tired of fighting and he was ready to go to sleep. And so I think at that moment, I became a little bit more accepting because I knew he was suffering. I knew I could see it. And so he told me he was done fighting and that he was ready to go to sleep. He said that he loved me. And I just told him how proud I was of him and how good he did and that I loved him and I would see him soon. And I think at that moment I had to accept it. And I think about like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane where he asked God, like, take this cup of suffering from me, but your will, not mine. And so it was definitely that moment where we wanted the cup of suffering to be taken away from us. And he ultimately did, just not in the way that I would have wanted it to be done. You know, I would have wanted Jaden to be healed on this side of eternity. And And I wouldn't say I've completely accepted it yet. I think I'm still learning a lot about grief and how it affects, my daily living, but also like those around me. And so it's just such a strange thing because I feel like it was yesterday, but it's been almost 2 years. And at the same time, it feels like it was a lifetime ago that I last hugged him or talked to him. But his spirit was just so big that like I still feel his presence, and I still can hear his laugh the same as I did, and I can hear him talking to me, and those kind of things. And so I hold on to that. And I think we have a lot to learn about death. And I think we have a lot to learn about eternity and what that really is. And, I've looked more into heaven than I have my whole life. And it's just amazing the experiences that people have had and come back and share. And that really gives me hope. So I recently watched a podcast of a guy who went to heaven, and he talked about his pets being there, and talked about seeing his dad and people that had gone before him and those kind of things. And it just makes you wonder, what they're doing, Yeah. And so, yeah.
You think you will be able to go through what you went through if it wouldn't be for your faith?
I don't think so. It really held me together. I would bring all my Bibles and journals and books and everything to the hospital, and I would just read and immerse myself in worship. And I've seen people go through it without God, and I feel like they are very angry and bitter, and not that there wasn't moments of anger and things like that, but it just gives you a different strength to be fighting from. Jesus told us in this world we will have trouble, so take heart, he's overcome the world. And so actually being able to like live out those scriptures was special in a way.
Now, as a woman, because you're still very young, and I know this question may be like out of place or very uncomfortable, are you still hopeful on becoming a mother again? Is that something that you feel like was beautiful but was painful at the same time? How do you feel right now as a woman?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely miss taking care of somebody. I definitely miss being a mom, and people will tell me, you're still a mom, you're still his mom. And I believe that. But there are certain things you do as a mom, just simply taking your kids to school or making dinner, like I miss those things. And so I wouldn't mind, being a mother again and having children. I also, think Jaden would have been enough too. He always wanted siblings, and so, maybe possibly. But it is something that I go back and forth about, because it was painful. And knowing that, because I was young when I had him, I was in high school, and knowing that I chose to keep him and chose to make that sacrifice being so young, and it's him still being taken away, it's like there is that reality. Like, if I have another kid, do I get to keep this one, or is it gonna, are they gonna be taken away too? It does cross my mind. But I also think that God does use everything to shape us and to bring out our purpose. And I just believe with all my heart that it wasn't all for nothing, and that something amazing is going to come out of it, just because Jaden was so amazing.
And that he would love to see you happy, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about this feeling that people, but specifically parents that go through cancer treatments with their kids experience. It's this post-traumatic effect, right? When I was in the hospital, when my youngest kid was born, we were there for 3 months fighting for his life. Thanks God we went one of those miracle stories that he survived. But even today, he's almost 5 years old, and I still panic with little things around him. And they told me I was going to experience this, and now not just with him, now with Caleb, who is older, and thanks God he's healthy right now and everything, but I still don't process those things. Do you feel that too? And how you find yourself recognizing those moments in your day-to-day?
Well, I write about it in the book about my first post-traumatic stress episode that I had. Jaden had just gone back to school, and he woke up one morning and started throwing up. And I mean, my body just like freaked out. He wasn't on treatment. He wasn't doing chemo, but just like the sound of it, my body was completely triggered. And so it was that at that moment I realized, okay, maybe I experienced some post-traumatic stress from this, not just him, you know? And so I got into therapy and worked through it. And I think, you know, it became easier after that. I was able to recognize my triggers. But then I had a whole new set of triggers while mourning and grieving. I remember one of my first breakdowns was at the grocery store. And it's a little funny now, but it was so embarrassing and terrible then. But I went and I got my cart and went to the checkout lane, and I looked down and there was like, I don't know, 10 or 15 things in my cart. And I was just like, there's not enough food here. None of Jaden's favorite things are in this cart. And like, it just, I don't know, it just was a really odd experience. I wasn't expecting it. I had no idea that would make me so sad. But I ended up leaving my groceries in Kroger and going out to my car and just crying and bawling for so long. And I was like, okay. So then I avoided Kroger for a little bit, trying to not invoke that. But everything's fine with grocery shopping now. But the thing is you just never know what's going to trigger you in grief. And I think as time goes on, you expect there to be less triggers. And that's not necessarily true. Last year, October, when the weather turned cooler, I was triggered. I was sad. I started missing him more. Jaden loved the winter. He loved the snow. I'm a summer girl, you know, so I feel like I'm being forced to love the winter now. But that made me really sad when the weather started getting cold, and just, you know, made me think about him. And so things I do to help me is I'm a part of a grief group, and the grief group that I attend is specifically for parents who have lost children. And so I find people that I relate with, and I think that that's been really, really helpful because, you know, grieving, sometimes you tend to feel a little crazy, like, surely this is crazy, that what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, you know, but when you ask somebody else and they're like, I was there, I remember that, because I distinctly also remember thinking I was going to forget him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I needed to save all the pictures, all the videos, you know, even though they're already saved, I need to print them out, you know, I need to get all his voice recordings off his phone and send them to mine, you know, and like, so I reached out to one of the moms, and she was like, I remember feeling that way. And she was like, 3 years later, I still, you know, can see him and hear him the same. I also have an amazing therapist who has walked through the whole cancer treatment with me. Because after I had my little post-traumatic episode when Jaden got the stomach bug, I started
being a normal teenager.
Yeah, who would have known? And so I started seeing her. So she had walked me through a lot of it, and just so to have her walk me through the grief part of it too has been really helpful and really special. And also just not making it a taboo subject. I love it when people bring up Jaden. I love when people are like, I thought about him today, or I saw this and it made me think about him, and I'm thinking about you. It makes me, it brings me joy. I'm already sad, on certain days. So you bringing him up isn't what's making me sad. It actually, brings me some joy. So there's a lot of like just emotions that you go through that you've never felt before, or opposite emotions at the same time, like being sad that Jaden isn't a senior, but being so happy for all his friends that they're getting college offers and that they're figuring out their life. It's just this combating of emotions that you're having to work through. And I do think it takes work. It's not just something you can sit back and just kind of let go by. It's something you do have to intentionally be aware of and work through.
I think that's what makes the big difference, because we choose how to live the experiences that life put in front of us, right? Like, I know people that have lost loved ones, and they they choose to get lost in those feelings. And I know it's not easy. And sometimes they don't even choose that, but that's the only way they know. And you choose the other way around, which is using that pain into purpose. And that's what you're doing now with your book, that we're going to talk about it in a little bit. With your book, this is the second book that you write, but also helping others in this process. But how your life can change when you decide to ask for help, to educate yourself in those topics, to accept the way you are living your own experience, but also to give it purpose, you helping others. Did you know about this way to choose to live, or you were learning through your own process and found a light that took you to where you are at right now?
I'm just very trauma aware, just being a teacher and my background, and just knowing the different things that kids go through. And you could really, any kind of kid could walk through your classroom, and just having tools for them, and just knowing a lot about trauma in general. I knew that I didn't want to be stuck in my trauma. I knew that it was going to be work. I knew that I was going to have to do things that were uncomfortable, but I just set my mind to do that. And, there are days where, I'm in bed, or, days when I cry. I think that they get fewer and then farther away, like this holiday season wasn't as bad as last holiday season. And I think you learn how to carry it. I think grief is something that people can hide for a little bit, and maybe the busyness of life can move them at a certain pace where they think maybe they've forgotten about it. But I also know that like grief needs its attention, and you can't just, sweep it under the rug. And so I intentionally I didn't go back to work right away. I stayed home to get used to the silence, to figure out a new routine, because I had Jaden when I was a teenager. I was in high school, so I had never lived an adult life, an adult day without him. And so I had no idea what single people with no children did, like with all their time, because a lot of my time was taken up with him even before cancer. I mean, sports and school and friends, all the things that kids come with, So trying to figure out what to do with all my time, and I didn't want to waste it because I learned how precious time was. So really pushing to use my time to honor his life and his fight well is really where my mind went. What can I do to get people aware, honor him well, and just finish my race.
What is your stage that you're living at right now?
I'm definitely in a new season. I have stepped out and been an author and a speaker for, this will be my second year doing that. And so just really figuring out all the components that go with it. I never pictured myself as kind of an entrepreneur in a way. I went to school to be a teacher, and then I went to grad school to be a principal. So I thought that that was going to be my career path, and this has just kind of completely turned it in a different direction. And so I feel like the season I'm in right now is very much learning. I'm learning who I am. As a person, I'm learning what to do with my time. I'm learning how to help other people. I'm learning just the technical part of being an entrepreneur and all those different things that come with that. And to me, I'm looking at it as an adventure, because honestly, you never know what life is going to throw at you. None of us are promised tomorrow. So really just maximizing each day that I've been given.
Yeah. And your book, this book is very special. The first one you wrote was about praying, right? Specifically prayers.
It was a devotional, yes.
But this one, it's very personal. Tell us a little bit about your book.
When Jaden passed away, I felt released to start working on the project. And it was very healing along the way as well. It took a lot of time. I tell everybody it's a labor of love because so many tears were shed as I was writing. And it's very vulnerable to tell your story, whether, it's on a podcast like this or whether it's in a book or, on a vlog, whatever. To put yourself out there is really vulnerable, but I just felt like the childhood cancer community does yield a lot of bereaved parents. A lot of children do not make it out alive, and I really felt like there needed to be an awareness, but also a little bit of rawness, like what actually happens behind the scenes, because you can see these commercials of these different hospitals and stuff where they are trying to raise money and share stories and stuff. And sometimes people don't know, what goes on behind the scenes. And so I really wanted to bring to life what happens behind the scenes, but also that it's not all terrible, that there are good people helping you, that there are amazing charities out there that try to bring joy to these kids whose lives have been turned upside down. And I just wanted to bring hope that there is life on the other side if you choose to do that, because I remember telling people, I can't live without my son. Like, I can't do it. I know I can't. And now looking back, I just look and I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm living. I'm trying my best. I'm honoring him in this way.
As busy people that we are, living a very quick life, not paying attention to the things that really matter, sometimes we complain about everything. We're not grateful, right? And I have a son that is almost the same age than yours. And I'm always like, oh, he doesn't get the best grades. Oh, he doesn't clean if I don't tell him to clean. Oh, Caleb, do this. Caleb, do that. Like, always complaining, right? Mm-hmm. But when I read your story, and I'm a very emotional person, like you guys can see, I swear, I thank God because I have my son here. And you touch me.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that he's here with me and he's healthy. And I think you are giving us a big lesson.
Yeah. I think they're only in your household for so long, and I think we do put a lot of pressure on them to do things and to be what we weren't. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with having high expectations for your children and wanting the best for
Discipline.
them. Yeah, and discipline. That's one thing that even though Jaden was going through treatment, he still had chores to do at the house. He still had to get grades because in my mind, like, you're going to be a good citizen in this
Yeah.
society. You're going to be able to contribute to this world in some way. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do think that we need to pause and figure out where are our priorities. Is work before our family, or does
Yeah.
work come after our family? Let people know how lucky they are and how blessed. Your children may not be perfect. They aren't perfect, but you have them. And that's special because there are plenty of parents out there that wish they had one more day or one more hug or one more teacher phone call of them misbehaving or, towels on the ground, something,
Socks.
yeah, screaming, did you shower? Did you brush your teeth? Like all these little things that you don't think really matter a whole lot.
Voices are telling us that motherhood is hard, motherhood is painful, motherhood is sacrifice, and it's not worth it. And coming from someone that is enjoying so much that part of my life, but also coming from someone who experienced pain too, who experienced sacrifice in a different level, what would you tell to all those women out there that are thinking that this could not be for them? And I know there is women that decide that, and that's okay, that's perfect. But for those that feel the call in their hearts to be a mother and are afraid of.
I have never felt joy and a love like I have being a mother. My friends don't do that for me. My job doesn't do that for me. My dreams and goals haven't done that for me. And it's just something very special about being a mom, bringing a life into this world and taking care of it, and nurturing, your children and just watching them grow. I mean, he was a very busy kid, 100% boy. And so I worried about him constantly. But as he became a teenager, he became so responsible, so respectful, so kind. And as a mom, like, that is just such a good feeling to know that, like, you played a major role in doing that. And I think being a mom is very, very special. And I think it is something that is a gift from God. And I know women who also struggle to, be a mom and go through infertility and different things like that. And there can be so much heartbreak and discouragement with being a mom. Am I doing this right? Am I a good mom? Like, always questioning everything you do. But I think that that's the mark of being a good mom, is always wanting to improve and just do the best that you absolutely can. So I am for it. I think motherhood should be experienced. I think it is the best experience I've had here on this earth. And if I knew the outcome and were asked to do it all over again, I totally would. I would do it all over again. I would be his mom. I feel lucky to have been his mom. And it was a huge blessing in my life.
What can you tell to those parents going through grief right now?
Yeah, don't give up. I do think that there's purpose in your pain. I think we go through things to help people go through the same things. There is life on the other side. There is joy if you allow it to enter into your life, if you allow yourself to do the work and go through the pain, you can see goodness coming out of that. And I think that that's really what I needed to do in order to find happiness again, because, oh man, I'm not naturally a sad person. I enjoy laughing and having a good time, but there's sadness that you have to work through. There's anger that you have to work through, bitterness and regrets, and you just don't work through it once. You've got to keep going, and as it comes, and don't give up, keep going. That God has something for you, and open your heart to accept it. And it's okay if you're mad at him or have questions. I just encourage you to take those to him and sit with him in it.
I'm going to put the link to get your book on the description of the episode, so they can just click on it and get the book and support you as well, support your work. They can follow you on social media if they need guidance, because I know that you took this very seriously, and now you are helping other parents going through this as well. What do you think your son is thinking of you right now?
I want him to be like, that's my mom. That's my mom, you know? I think about it often, and, you know, you see quotes and reels and all kinds of things, you know, that say just different, you know. I saw this one reel that was like, imagine heaven having a birthday party for you or something like that. And so I just imagine, like, when the book is released, that he'll be having a party for me up there, and just really just cheering me on. And I hope, you know, he's really proud of me. And so I'm hoping I'm making him proud.
He is. Yeah. And we are too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Febrero es el mes del amor, pero hoy quiero recordarte sobre un amor que muchas veces olvidamos: self-love. Porque sí, amamos a nuestra familia, nuestras amigas, cuidamos de todos, pero también tenemos que cuidar de nosotras mismas. Early detection of breast cancer can save lives. And no, this message is not to scare you, es para darte poder. To remind you that knowing your body, getting your checkups, and listening to any change in your body is an act of self-love. Tu salud también es parte de tu historia. This February, give yourself the gift of time, knowledge, and care, porque tus senos también merecen amor. Visita unaen8mujeres.com para aprender más. Guarda y comparte este video con tu mejor amiga, because in community, we take better care of each other.